How's it going, folks? Recording a best ball video early in the year here, and we're going to be mostly taking a look at the rookie class for 2022 and kind of trying to discuss and think about how they will affect your best ball drafts this year. So we got one major change coming to Underdog this year. That's 20 rounds, and it is pretty big change having 2 extra rounds. So I think roster construction is going to be a little bit more fluid. So I think you really, need to have 2 QBs, 4 running backs, 9 wide receivers, and 2 tight ends. But that still leaves you quite a bit of space to work with. So you still have 5 other slots. So I've been kind of trying to either have still, 3 quarterbacks or 3 tight ends, or occasionally 3 of both. I really have only done a couple of these so far. So, and I think 5 running backs is probably optimal, but I think you have a little more room to freelance in the 20 rounds as opposed to in the 18 rounds. So we got pick 7 here. Kind of going to be probably picking somebody in the Jamar Chase, Najee Harris, Justin Jefferson group. Maybe Tyreek. I've already taken Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase in these drafts, so not that having more than one share is a bad thing, obviously. But what you don't want to do is take your share of Jamar Chase at 1-3 because you can just get him later in other drafts. Unless you're only doing one draft and you really want Jamar Chase, then go nuts and take him at 3. But not much of a point in doing that if you're going to have a bunch of these, unless you want to be crazy overexposed. Speaking of being overexposed to players, last year, at the end of last year, watched a video of Eric Bimefor's buddy who won the DK Million. And he was talking about how he kind of just was all in on players. And kind of liked it. The year that I had my best year, I basically only drafted 3 or 4 different players in round 18. Of course, they were all hits, and that's why I had such a good year. But if you start having misses and you're overexposed, I guess it's a bad thing. I'm going to take Najee Harris here because I don't think I'm really going to end up with that much of them. So I'll take 1 share here. So yeah, that year I was drafting, Terry McLaurin and A.J. Brown, Darren Waller, and DJ Chark as pretty much my only round 18 picks. So I'm not going to be as worried about being overexposed this year. If you're overexposed on somebody you're all in on and they're good, it's really good for you. If they're bad, it's really bad for you. But if you're constantly able to make, these picks year over year where you're doing more good than bad, then it's going to work out for you more often than it isn't. See Javonte Williams got the 110 here. That's an egregiously terrible pick for me. I absolutely love Javonte Williams. I understand why everyone loves Javonte Williams. Don't get me wrong. But, Javonte Williams was in a timeshare in college and then was in a timeshare in the NFL. And then while in a timeshare in the NFL, wore down. So I don't really see why he wouldn't end up in a timeshare this year. I realize he's insanely good, but teams need more than one running back on their team. Joe Mixon or Debo. Well, I've already grabbed a few shares of Debo, and I'm guessing that I'm going to end up with almost no Joe Mixon. Just because I don't I'll only ever take Joe Mixon if he falls. I'm never going to take him at ADP, so may as well get a share here. So started off running back. That's funny because both of my first 2 drafts, I started off wide receiver. Started one off Chase and Debo. The other one was Justin Jefferson, and can't really remember who. Started off 3 wide receivers. The second one was Justin Jefferson. DK Metcalf was the 3rd person I drafted. Oh, sorry, I didn't start off 3 wide receivers. DeAndre Swift was the 2nd person I drafted. So anyway, let's get into the rookies a bit here. So as far as quarterbacks go, I've got this tab pulled up over here. So NFLDraftBuzz.com, they have like a pretty good like breakdown where you can see all the rookies that are going in. So recommend going and taking a look over there if you want to check out some rookies. So the guys I'm interested in for best ball this year are obviously like the guys I think will start at some point this year. And in previous years, I've said I really don't want to draft any quarterback that's not going to be starting week one. Well, that's a little changed now that we have the 20 rounds and you can go 3 QB more often. I'm definitely way more interested in taking, a guy who's not going to start week one necessarily. As long as they're going to start. I mean, they still have to start pretty early for it not to be a disaster. But so Matt Corral has got some rushing upside. Definitely interested in him in the last few rounds. Kenny Pickett, a little bit less interested, but it depends on what situation he ends up in. I'm not too worried about his hand size. I guess that's a big thing going on with him in the Senior Bowl. Sam Howell has some decent upside. And then Malik Willis has insane upside. And at first I was thinking I was probably going to have this guy off my board because I thought there's no chance he's going to start in year one. But seeing some of the teams that are interested in him now at the Senior Bowl, like the Steelers and teams like that, if they were to, be able to trade up, or I don't think there's any way the Steelers could get him just sitting at their pick. It's nearly impossible. There's too many teams that need quarterbacks in front of them. But if he was ending up on the Steelers and they've already kind of started we're going to start Mason Rudolph campaign, which might not even be untrue because if they did end up with Willis, I wouldn't be surprised if they started Rudolph for 3 or 4 games and then turned it over to Willis. But this is a guy you gotta take some shots on. Absolute cannon arm. He had a faster ball velocity than even Josh Allen. Runs like a 4.4. So pretty much Corral, Pickett, Howell, and Willis are the guys I'm interested in for best ball. If you want to have Ritter on your list, I don't have any problem with that. He has some rushing upside. I just have a hard time seeing him go to a team that's going to use him early on. So like we said with the pick of Joe Mixon, I'm going to take Jalen Waddle here because I feel like he's going too high for me, so I'm just never going to draft Jalen Waddle at ADP because, he's mostly going around this 1-2 turn. And since I'm never going to draft him at ADP, I want to take him when he falls. I think T. Higgins probably would be my favorite pick in that spot, a little bit more than Jalen Waddle, but I just think I'll never get Jalen Waddle if I don't take him in spots like this. Whereas I'll definitely get T. Higgins because I'm fine taking T. Higgins at his actual ADP. It's probably going to not be looking to not take a running back for the next while because there are a lot of decent running backs in this draft class, and they're going to be varying degrees of how much they affect fantasy. So once I make my next pick, we'll talk a little more in depth about running backs. I think it's the biggest position group this year for how it's going to affect the NFL and players' usage, even more so than wide receiver, which is a pretty strange thing to say. Kind of don't really want to end up with Amari Cooper here, so hoping that doesn't happen. I didn't like the way Jerry Jones talked about him when he missed time for COVID and stuff. I think there's a chance that Amari Cooper could be out of Dallas. So I'll probably take either McLaurin or DJ Moore. McLaurin with a quarterback upgrade definitely highly interests me. But I'm going to take one of those 2 players. A little unexciting just taking the guys at the top of the queue here, but that's how it rolls sometimes. Here goes McLaurin, so we're just going to take DJ Moore and hope he gets better quarterback play. So we got Harris, Mixon, Waddle, and Moore. Not too bad. So like I said, the quarterback class isn't super crazy. I could see taking a shot on Ritter in the last round if I'm looking for a third QB and these other guys are gone, but he's 5th for me. And Carson Strong he doesn't have enough upside, and I'm not sure he's going to start right away. So, if I'm getting a guy that's not going to start right away, they got to have more upside than Carson Strong does. He just doesn't run at all or anything. So, got some pretty impressive 40s in this class here with Ritter at the 4.55 and Malik Willis at the 4.42. Probably will take a shot or two on Ritter, like I said, but it's going to be as a third QB in the last round, and I don't know how often he'll even make it to the last round. But so I think for me, for interest, it's Malik Willis 1, Corral 2, Howell 3, Pickett 4, Ritter 5. Let's switch over to running back. So unfortunately, running back, we're going to have a lot to talk about because this running back class is crazy. It's not like the top end of it just isn't all that strong. So like everyone thinks the class is like absolute garbage because these top 3 guys aren't as good as like what we're normally seeing at the top of the running back class. But I mean, there's 15 players that can make an impact in the NFL this year. Not the impact where you really want to have them for best ball, but where they could ruin things for other players that you do want to have for best ball. So we'll get into that. We'll talk about the first 3 here after I make my next pick. I guess we can talk about them a little now. So I have Breece Hall 1, Kenneth Walker 2, Isaiah Spiller 3. Spiller worries me a bit. He has like a lot of things in his profile that I do not care for. Who do we have on the horizon here? Don't really have interest in a quarterback here. One thing I'm doing this year is I am like not going to be reaching to stack even at like the quarterback position. I was able to get Chase and Burrow in a draft already, my last draft actually, but I got Burrow like a round and a half after ADP because like I'm just not taking Burrow over Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson. I don't give a shit if it's stack or not. That doesn't make any sense to me. These guys upsides, Lamar Jackson has the highest points per game of like any player in NFL history at this point. I think wide receiver doesn't make sense to take until the next round. We could take Lamar and then see if Hollywood drops to us. I like that. I don't mind Etienne or Dobbins there. It's fine, but I've already taken shares of both. And Lamar Jackson still has the highest fantasy points per game of any player. I believe even including Christian McCaffrey, but that's probably because McCaffrey's played so many half games, 1 quarters. So, yeah. I have Breece Hall as my top running back because at the moment, like he's listed as having ran a 4.39 at his school, which I don't believe to be actually accurate, but until we see what the combine data is and see what the 40 is there, I don't know what else you have to go on as far as how fast these guys are. And 4.39 is blazing. That's like, what Jonathan Taylor ran at the combine. So if that is in fact true, then I don't think there's too much question to have him as your top running back. So also, he doesn't really have any weaknesses where both the other guys do have weaknesses. So Kenneth Walker really doesn't have much pass catching work so far. And that's a bit of a problem, but not a major problem, but it definitely caps his upside. And then we have Isaiah Spiller, who's got a whole laundry list of problems. But I'm going to tell you why I'd still be interested in him after I make my pick. So we're kind of hoping Hollywood makes it to us. I wouldn't hate Mike Williams or Brandon Cooks or Brandon Ayuk. I'd probably take Ayuk over Cooks because of the age. Would I take Ayuk over Mike Williams? Maybe. Mike Williams is probably be going to a new team. So that's going to create an interesting dynamic. He might not. He might stay with the Chargers. For half a year, Mike Williams was an absolute demon. Maybe it was more like a third of the year, but nice. We'll just take Hollywood here and be happy with that we got a stack where we didn't have to reach it all. That's cool. All right, so Isaiah Spiller. Well, let's finish up Kenneth Walker first because he's my number 2. So Kenneth Walker issue is he doesn't really catch passes in college. Doesn't mean he can't do it at the NFL level, but it'd be hard seeing a team just like throwing him right into it immediately when he really doesn't have much experience doing it, right? But when you look at Kenneth Walker, why is he still up there? Why is he number 2 for me? Like, he's still like Nick Chubb light, you know? So, yeah, he's not. Nick Chubb is like elite rusher. Like, Kenneth Walker's a tier below that. But Nick Chubb also gets hosed on his team not using him at the goal line as much as they should / could. So his touchdown upside really is, single digits almost. Nick Chubb's is. Like, I could see him having a double-digit touchdown year, but wouldn't surprise me if it doesn't happen. Whereas Kenneth Walker is not the elite rusher that Nick Chubb is, but he's probably going to be used a lot more in the red zone. And, the guy scored like 20-plus rushing touchdowns this year in college. So Kenneth Walker 2 for me, and then Isaiah Spiller. So Isaiah Spiller's got like a laundry list of problems, which isn't really what you want to hear. For a rookie running back, you might be drafting in round 1 of your dynasty, or, I think at the price Spiller is on best ball, I mean, he's just a fantastic pick, period, because like the rookies are still probably undervalued right now in these drafts, which is a little surprising because I thought everyone would be super excited for them. But once the actual NFL draft goes, these guys are going to go way higher in these drafts. So you best get your selections well if they are not that expensive. So Isaiah Spiller issues. He doesn't create anything on his own. He has a negative yards created, which is bad. You don't want a guy who can create on his own. And he's quite the fumbler, which is also bad. I'm just going to make my pick. I think I'm just going to take Bateman and have our little double stacking go on. I like Bateman reasonably enough with these other players. I don't really feel like I'm reaching too much to grab my Bateman share there. So, yeah, Spiller's got a bit of a fumbling issue. It's not that big a deal. He does catch passes. He has a very, very light amount of touchdowns in college compared to what you would like to see for a guy that's going to be a first-round pick in your rookie drafts. Like, his touchdown production in college really isn't that great. So he doesn't create much for himself. He's not super fast, but he is very athletic for his size. He fumbles a bit. That's a lot of issues, right? But when you watch his tape, there's just something about the guy where you're like, man, I see it. And like, I watched him a few times before I was able to put my finger on what NFL player like he reminded me of. And it was Le'Veon Bell. So I went back and looked at Le'Veon Bell, and it was like a lot of the same issues for college. I think Le'Veon Bell only had 25 touchdowns in 35 college games or something like that. So because I just see something on tape where I really, really like Isaiah Spiller, I'm not dropping him too far, but of the big 3 running backs, he's 3 for me. Now, don't worry, we're not going to go through every running back in extreme detail like this, just the top 3. But we will start to list off some other running backs that could be involved and be good themselves, or could be involved and just create problems for other players. Interesting. Miles Sanders and Isaiah Spiller are still on the board here. I think I'm probably going to snatch my tight end at this next pick. Okay, I lied. I'm going to take Chase Claypool. I love the discount you're getting on Chase Claypool this year. There's still 3 tight ends that I'm pretty excited to draft, so I'm going to just kind of hope one of the 3 makes it back to me. I don't really like Mike Gesicki, but Mike Gesicki might end up on a different team now, so he's a free agent. So if he gets out of Miami, maybe things go better for him. All right, so some other running backs that could have some impact. Rashad White, he probably is going to start off as a bit more of a pass catcher, but he's got decent 40, decent size. This is a JUCO guy. Doesn't mean he can't succeed. I don't have him up this high. As I don't have him ranked number 4. I have already taken a shot at him in a rookie draft because I would really like the pass catching ability. Dameon Pierce, this dude's tank, absolute tank. It does confuse me as to like why people are nuts for Dameon Pierce, even though I like him too. The production was really good in college, but I mean, this guy's like this 5'10", 220 tank, right? But Jerome Ford down here, he's listed at 220 by a school, but obviously that's bullshit. These guys have been listed at 209, but this dude runs a fucking blazing 40 for his size. This guy can catch passes. This is a guy that I think could end up as a workhorse in the NFL, despite not going until like round 5 in the NFL draft. So like if one of the teams, we always project the top guys to go to the top teams that need running backs, right? We're always like, oh, so Walker's going to go to Arizona and Spiller's going to go to Atlanta and Hall's going to go to Miami, and it never works out that way. So if one of those teams just misses on these guys because somebody else wants them more, or somebody else trades it up a couple spots like Denver did and stole Javonte from the Falcons last year. So I could see one of those teams that really, really, really needs a running back actually ending up with Jerome Ford and him starting right away. But I do recognize that he's just not going to have the draft capital that we love there. I think I'm all right pushing another round for running back. So I'll take Freiermuth. We have a lot of Steelers on this team. It's probably not a great thing, huh? We'll definitely have to keep in mind. I don't mind 3, especially when they're 3 at 3 different positions, but we probably can shut down the Steelers for the rest of this draft. Not that is there anybody else from the Steelers that's even going to be drafted? Well, probably not. So it is what it is. Oh yeah, Juju. Juju's probably not going to be on the Steelers, but he could be. So looking back at running back, what else do we have of interest? I'd probably be interested in Kyron Williams. So Kyron Williams is another interesting one. He's their number 6 ranked guy here. It's kind of small. He's 5'9", not 200 pounds. Another Blazer. He's another guy that he could end up on one of these teams that Arizona, Atlanta, Miami that we think desperately needs a running back, and where these 3 guys are getting slotted every time to go to those spots. If one of those teams misses these 3 guys, they could end up grabbing Kyron Williams, and then it's kind of like a Michael Carter situation where maybe he's a little smaller, but he's by far the best guy in the backfield, and then he is a fantasy gem. So I do have a little interest in Kyron Williams at my next pick. Melvin Gordon still has a chance to end up being a starter somewhere. I think he's going to go back to Denver and take a poop on our Javonte parade. Just from what he's put out there on social, it just sounds like he's super into returning to Denver. I'd probably be. It's pretty close between Kyron and Melvin Gordon, actually. I think with how well Melvin Gordon played last year, probably makes more sense to take him, because I think both would move up a lot if they wound up on a spot where they could be a starter. As far as wide receivers, nothing that's super sticking out to me as holy crap, you got to draft this guy. So I think we'll take a running back. Kyron Williams or Melvin Gordon. Well, since we're doing the rookie show, let's just take Kyron Williams for the content. So there we go. About a round above ADP. A little rough. But this guy's definitely going to catch passes in the NFL. He's guaranteed a role on whatever team he ends up on. It's just a matter of how big will that role be and how good will that role be for fantasy. But this guy's going to have a role. Melvin Gordon goes a couple picks later. If I wasn't like recording this video where I was talking about rookies, I would probably just take Melvin Gordon there, just because he had a really good year last year, and I don't think that he's getting completely phased out. So the next thing we got to talk about with running backs is that there's like a ton of running backs that are like going to be awesome 2-down grinders. So like Dameon Pierce, Brian Robinson, Hassan Haskins, who's not even on this page. Yeah, we're going to page 2. That's how many guys there are. Hassan Haskins, Zamir White. There's so many running backs in this class. Devontae Price is another one. Tyler Algier is more of a do-it-all type of guy, so we'll talk about him a bit more in a second. But there's like so many 2-down grinder type running backs. And like, I realize those are guys we're not super interested in for fantasy immediately their rookie year, but just think of like one of these guys ends up with like Michael Carter. That is horrendous for Michael Carter, because he really needs like to be kind of the 1A, and the 1A implies gets goal line work to me. And if you're just giving him most of the lower value touches plus, I mean, the catches obviously, it's not all lower value touches, but if he's losing the goal line work to one of these 2-down grinder types, that ain't good. Not good. So guys like Singletary and Michael Carter right now worry me a bit. I think that they are pretty much getting drafted at their ceiling values. A lot of decent wide receivers still on the board. I like Cole Kmet and Irv. Guys I've drafted both quite a bit of. Quarterback's getting a little thin, not too crazy or anything. Kind of want to take a shot on T-Law here. I really don't worry about ADP as much when it's this early. I'm going to take a shot on Trevor. Because just like ADP hasn't been sussed out yet, so like the ADP on here just doesn't really matter that much. Okay, so let's talk about Tyler Algier. It's another guy. 220, 5'11", runs a 4.4, can catch the ball. He's got decent patience. I mean, just it's another dude. This dude could end up, on one of those teams that needs a feature back, and they missed out on the top 3, and boom, now all of a sudden Tyler Algier is a feature back, and you're going to get him super late in these early best balls. I mean, once the NFL draft happens and this guy ends up in a spot like that, obviously then he'd be going around like fucking 6 or something ridiculous. Kennedy Brooks, another guy to keep your eye on. So now that we've talked about the 2-down grinders, didn't really include Tyler Algier. He was like another guy that could end up in a sort of a workhorse role because he kind of does everything. But there's a whole group of satellite backs that can shit on players that currently have the backfield to themselves, where they could steal receiving work from guys that, like a Josh Jacobs that just got his receiving work finally that he's been waiting for. So, we got like James Cook that's going to steal receiving work from somebody. We have Tyler Batty that's going to steal receiving work from somebody. So I guess those are like the only 2 that I'm super pointing out. Well, there's also, Kyron Williams, if he ends up in that sort of a role, it's going to steal receiving work. Van Jefferson's pretty interesting to me. He was like very good before Odell came. I think I'm just going to take Marvin Jones here. I don't really see a reason not to stack him with Trevor Lawrence. It's cool. Marvin Jones was like so to bad last year, but got to think that offense will be a little better, right? Okay, maybe not. So with Lamar and Trevor, I might take a third QB, but if I do, it's going to be in like the last round or the second to last round. Cole Kmet, Irv. So let's skip to tight end real quick for rookies because wide receiver will take longer. So for tight ends, it's like Trey McBride is a fucking animal beast. Think like Freiermuth of last year. Get him, draft him. If he ends up on a team that already has a good tight end, so be it. Then that sucks, but you can't not draft the Trey McBride in these early ones. I don't think you really need to draft any of the other rookie tight ends in these early drafts. I do think Weidemeyer and Isaiah Likely are also interesting, but I'd rather wait and see where they wind up because they don't have the upside of a Trey McBride. Trey McBride is insane. So I am interested in Kmet or Irv. Not as much Logan Thomas, and it has less to do with his age or his injuries and more to do with just like there's kind of a lot of tight ends in that place. Like they really liked John Bates. Like, okay, don't take Malik Willis in round 12. Don't do that. Take these guys at value if you're going to take these rookies. It's not that he can't pay off that value at round 12, but it's too early. He could end up on a team where he doesn't even play this year. So that's pretty much it for tight ends. Draft Trey McBride, draft Trey McBride, draft Trey McBride. Trey McBride is fucking awesome. And on to wide receiver. So let's move your tab over here. Gonna make my next pick before we really start talking about them. Wide receiver over here is getting a little like bleh. Cole Kmet. Oh yeah. Okay, I'm just gonna snatch Irv then. So we got Freiermuth and Irv, like the upsides there. Harris, Mixon, Kyron Williams, decent. Got Waddle, DJ Moore, Marquise Brown, Bateman, Claypool, and Marvin Jones. Not the poppinest wide receiver group, but certainly not bad in any way. So let's get into wide receivers a bit more. So at the top, they've got Drake London. I have Treylon Burks at the top. This dude's freak. He kind of reminds me of, he's not quite as big as DK Metcalf, but he's like still really big. But imagine if DK Metcalf could run advanced routes instead of being limited like he is. Then imagine DK Metcalf can also play all three wide receiver positions. Like line up anywhere on the field and still be effective. And that's kind of what Treylon Burks is. So that's why I've got him number one. Drake London is my number two and number one on their list. This dude's huge, 6'5". He can move. He's got run after catch abilities. He's insane in contested catches. He definitely reminds me of like Mike Evans or Vincent Jackson, you know, those tall dudes. Garrett Wilson's pretty nice technician. We got Jameson Williams, who obviously tore his ACL. I do think he still needs to be in your player pool, though he's basically not being discounted much at all right now. So at his current price, I'll probably just say nah. But I am interested in Jameson Williams. I just feel like his price has really not come down very much at all. Olave and Garrett Wilson are both fine picks in your drafts now. Mechie, I'm not as sure about. I don't have him ranked anywhere near as high as these guys do. I've got Dotson over Mechie. I've got David Bell over Mechie. David Bell, this is like insanely too low. I have George Pickens over him. So, in my opinion, George Pickens is like just like one of the fantastic values in these drafts. Like this guy's upside is absolutely fucking bonkers. And he's going, you know, kind of late. I think he got taken in this draft, but he was going, you know, after Dotson in most of my drafts. Might just take Fireball Jones here. Guess I could click over to RP real quick. Kind of like Khalil Herbert and Sonny Michel. Brian Robinson's interesting to me. I have taken a little bit of Dotson. I really do like Dotson. All right, well, I would normally take Tim Patrick here, but again, because we're doing a little rookie show here, we're going to take Dotson. Dotson is kind of like a do-everything type of guy. Does like everything well. Not huge, but he's super fast. I don't know, I think people think he can only really run deep routes, but that's not what I've seen on tape, so I would disagree with the people that say that. So, like, I don't really... This is the one player group where I'm like, my rankings are way off from what the NFL Draft Buzz rankings are. Like, I've got Burks 1, London 2, Wilson 3, Jameson Williams 4. But, you know, my rankings are more thinking about Dynasty at the moment because I do a lot of that. So, like, I've just kind of started to, like, really dive into where I would put these guys for best ball. I still would put Jameson Williams 4 for best ball even because, you know, doesn't matter if he misses some games if he's insane in the best ball playoffs. The reason why I don't love him as a pick in best ball right now is like he just isn't getting discounted for being hurt at all. You're drafting him where he would normally be drafted if he wasn't hurt at all. So that's more my issue with him. Love is good, a good pick. Yeah, I love George Pickens and David Bell and Dotson that you can get in these draft. And Mechie's all right. I definitely like Mechie more than I like a Sky Moore. Wandel is a guy people really, really like. I completely out. I want nothing to do with him. Yes. Way too excited to get Tim Patrick. I know. So, Wandel Robinson. Why are you completely out on him, do you ask? So, to me, this guy seems like a gadgety type, like, guy that could be used kind of like Debo's used, or like we think LaVisca should be used, and LaVisca isn't used. So, then why don't you like him? Because fucking dude's 185 pounds. He would die if he's used like Debo Samuel is used, or like we would like LaVisca used. He's just too small. Like, I think he's like kind of like a bad Rondell Moore. And like, I didn't want Rondell Moore last year. Don't want Rondell Moore this year. Certainly don't want a bad Rondell Moore. That's kind of what he reminds me of. This guy where it's like, I don't see what he really can get used for outside of these like kind of gimmicky type role plays. And then he's really not big enough to take the pounding of getting carries and that kind of stuff. So he was a running back, yeah, in high school, but don't see it. Do not see how this guy translates to the NFL, especially not in year one. I mean, he's a guy that might, you know, eventually carve out a role, but I think that's going to take time. Shakir and Tolbert are a couple other wide receivers I am pretty cool with taking shots on late. Oops. I think at the moment I'm going to be looking to add another running back. I assume Algier got taken, right? I guess he was really late. Well, he's not that much further. So if we want Algier, we could probably get him around later. Do I want Sony and Algier? I'm going to take Sony here. So if Algier is there when we pick in round 17, we'll probably snatch him up too. I think Sony like showed NFL teams enough that he's going to at least get a shot to be like a 1B, if not a 1A for a team. It would be a little troubling if he somehow wound up back on the Rams. The Rams really don't have money to sign people. And like I think there'll be a competitive market for Sony Michel and Odell. So I don't think you'll see either of those players go back. But So let's queue up some people that we're interested in here. I like Davis Mills quite a bit for like a 1 year type of guy. He actually showed some decent upside his rookie year. I liked how Braxton Berrios looks. Terrence Marshall's the guy I'm willing to take. Terrace Marshall. It's the guy I'm looking to take another shot on this year, despite last year being a complete just dud. I don't mind Albert O if you kind of get shut out of the starting type tight ends. One, I think there's a chance he could be traded, and two, even if he's not, something happens to Noah Fant, like Albert O showed that he can actually like do real damage for you. I would have interest in Lazard if we know Rodgers is still there, but unfortunately we're going to have to choose before we know that. Jalen Reagor, no fucking thank you. Deontay Harris is a guy I really like in the last few rounds. So right now I'm probably going to take out Gier or Terrace Marshall, hoping one of those two makes it to us. So if they're both there, even though Terrace Marshall's got like a much higher ADP, we'll take Algier for the rookie show. Ooh, sniped. All right. Well, we'll go ahead Terrace Marshall then. And now we got to kind of look into other running backs we would be okay with as our last. I want to still take some of these rookies with higher upside. I think Batty and Cook are like all right, but I don't really think that there's much chance that they end up in workhorse roles. I think even if they went to a team that needed a workhorse, that they wouldn't be workhorses. That those teams would find other solutions to that problem. So like Terrace Marshall was a first round PFF rated guy going into last year's draft, and I realized last year couldn't possibly have went worse. And in recent memory, we haven't had the best things happen when we've been going back to the wide receivers, right? With like Brian Edwards and N'Keal Harry and Jalen Reagor. It seems like all these guys that have been massive flops, and then we go back to them have continued to suck. But Carolina, like, what has he got in front of him? Robbie Anderson? Come on. Dude can't beat out Robbie Anderson. I find that hard to believe. This could be a draft where we end up with Ritter if these other quarterbacks go. I guess there's still Baker Mayfield too. I guess I should put Baker Mayfield in the queue, even though I'm not that interested in him. Nerf Ritter, it wasn't taken already. So between Hassan, Haskins, and Jerome Ford definitely has more upside. Better pass catcher. Hassan Haskins, much better chance of just being like the two-down grinder type of dude. So we're going to pick between those two. I've drafted some Jerome Ford already. I have not drafted any Hassan Haskins. So we're going to take Hassan Haskins. He had a just fantastic year last year at Michigan. Dude was a beast. Depending how things look at tight end, I wouldn't hate just only rolling with two tight ends, even though like that kind of worries me a bit with Freiermuth because Freiermuth has already had a few concussions, and the more concussions you get, the longer they keep you out for them. So maybe that wouldn't be the best side. With Njoku being a free agent, I don't think Austin Hooper is too bad of a pick. Also, Gronk could be out of Tampa Bay, and I don't know, could be back to the old OJ Howard, Jameis Winston combo in Tampa Bay, right? That's a thing that could happen. I really want to see OJ Howard do something. Remember back when he first started and he would catch those like crazy long touchdowns? I want to see that again. I think I'd be better off going 2 quarterback than going 2 tight end with this build because, got Lamar at the top end if he were to stay healthy, and then Trevor Lawrence. But I think I'll probably end up with 3-5-9-3, which I think is like the optimal build, but it's not what I'm picking every single time. Specifically at tight end, if I get one of like the really good tight ends, like the top echelon tight ends, and I'm kind of inclined to just take 2. But I want the second one to be somebody decent also, if I'm only taking 2. If like my second tight end is kind of someone that's, not that great, then I'm probably going to take a third, even if I have a good top tight end. So we only have 2 picks left to make. Ooh, Jerome Ford went to the guy before me, Bendels. I think I'm going to take Austin Hooper. I do think with Njoku moving on, it can't be bad for him. I don't think you're ever going to see Austin Hooper be like as good as he was that one year in Atlanta. That's for sure. That was a unicorn year. So we can get you out. I think OJ Howard is definitely the more fun upside pick there, but like with Freddie having his little concussion things and Irv Smith being a bit of a complete wild card, like you don't know what the usage will be or if they're bringing back the dude who was good last year there, Conklin. So, Conklin could eat into Irv's work, even if Irv is kind of the guy there. So we could take a rookie quarterback. Keyshawn Vaughn's a little interesting at running back. Like, you got to think the worst case scenario for Keyshawn Vaughn at this point is to end up being the primary backup to whoever the starter is, right? Which is like not an unvaluable role. Decently, especially since he can catch passes and stuff. So you might be looking at, like a Darrell Henderson type guy that you can get super late. But also, what if they just like don't really find somebody else that they like, and they draft one of the 2 grinder types, and then they go in with Vaughn and a rookie. Vaughn might be the starter then. Don't think it's. I think that's like under 10% to happen, but I think it's above 0% to happen. So I think the fact that you can get Vaughn this late is pretty sweet. Kind of talking myself into taking him over. I just don't think we need these shots at wide receiver. We have 9, and we didn't take any of our 9 that late. So it's kind of between, do we want to add a 6th running back or a 3rd quarterback? Got what we need at tight end. We've got what we need at wide receiver. So, Lamar plus Trevor. So if Lamar is really good, and I think I'm just going to take Keyshawn Vaughn and take this deep shot that he ends up doing stuff. Being either like the 1B or maybe the starter, or like I said, even if he is just the handcuff, like that's a pretty good pick in round 20 to draft like a Darrell Henderson type handcuff. He might not be as good as Darrell Henderson, but catches passes. He was drafted in the 3rd round of the NFL draft. Like, I think just as a handcuff, he's fine value in round 20 or round 19. So let's take a look at this team one more time. And we discussed some rookies, and wide receiver is definitely like the hardest group to pin down. Running back, super deep, going to have a lot of effect on the NFL, but it might not be the kind of effect that's super useful to us in fantasy. So we ended up with Lamar and Trevor, which is pretty good. Najee, Mixon, Kyran. Sorry, excuse me. Sony Michel, Hassan, Haskins, and Keyshawn Vaughn. Waddle, DJ Moore. We got our stack pieces for Lamar in Hollywood and Bateman. Chase Claypool, Marvin Jones to go with Lawrence. Dotson, Fireball Jones, and Terrace Marshall. Then Freiermuth, Irv Smith, and Austin Hooper. Definitely happy with how this one turned out from the 7 spot. And thanks for watching, and good luck in your drafts.